Hello, hello, hello. It's Saturday night. It's March. Welcome to Dear Dana. Inhale to the count of 4. Take a deep breath. Shake it all off from the week. Hold it. Exhale slowly through your mouth. Release. Hello, Paradox Fossils. Inhale one more time through your nose. Hold it. Exhale to the count of 4 through your mouth. Excellent. Ready to talk about some stuff? Good job, me too. Welcome out there in the bushes. Let's get ready to have a discussion. Welcome everybody to Dear Dana. I'm gonna cut this music off. Welcome. We're gonna have a discussion today about Alex Murdaugh and family versus the Netflix show Outer Banks. Thought I'd put a new kind of spin to this conversation everybody's been having across the YouTubes in the world, because there are some similarities there. Yes, there are. If you've been watching that series, if you haven't been watching that series, it is something to binge a little bit on, because there are a lot of similarities. Not exactly, but hey, Paradox Fossils, if you're from the South, you get what I mean. I grew up in North Carolina, where Outer Banks takes place. I was born in Georgia, the Atlanta area, and I live there now. But and I've been to South Carolina and I'm not rich. Let me just say that. Let me preface with that. I'm not rich, but I hung out with some rich people and I knew some rich people. And the very wealthy, not all of them, so don't come after me, folks. Some of the very rich people, I did know of some of them that would push their limits sometimes, because they knew folks and their folks knew folks and they had networks, and sometimes they could get by with a little more than more of the middle class or common folk. And the attorneys, especially, are those in higher ranking positions. I did see that happen. And it's not that unheard of. It is not that unheard of. And in the show Outer Banks, there are classes, so to speak. You have the Pogues, which are the poorer class kids that hang out on the water, and you have the it was the Pogues and don't forget, Dana, you know who the other ones are. Don't have a brain. On the Outer Banks, you have the Pogues and the who? I know who they are. It's going to drive me crazy. What groups do you have on the Outer Banks? Kooks. You have the Pogues and the Kooks. The Kooks are the ones whose family have the power and the money. You've got the Pogues and the Kooks. Hey, Willow. The Pogues and the Kooks. And the Kooks are very particular about who their kids date. They only want their kids to date other kids whose families are in standing, whose families have money. Yes, people will come trickling in. So the Kooks, I'm doing good, Willow. Thank you for being here. The Kooks don't want their kids to date the Pogues. of course, you know how that goes. Typical Romeo and Juliet scenario, right? Just in a new day age. So, of course, just like the Murdaughs, their families, hey, Lady Spellbreaker Oracle, I'm just going to say Lady Spell, just like the Murdaughs, their families would probably have a hissy if their boys dated anybody that didn't have money. So I'm sure that most of those kids that they dated had money, right? Well, I don't know how many of the ones they were on the boat with, we heard about the boat ride, had money. I know that the girl that Paul dated at one time, hey, Marie Crum, she was worried because she didn't have a lot of money. And she said, you know, the parents of the girl said they would go on trips and take her on all kinds of things, and sometimes it would be uncomfortable because she didn't have the money that they did, and she didn't know she would ultimately fit in. So, getting back to the similarities and the not similarities. On Outer Banks, there is a girl named Sarah that dates a boy named JB. JB doesn't have money. Sarah's dad is really wealthy and runs the town, pretty much, right? He reminds me a lot of Alex Murdaugh. And you wonder how a father could harm his child, right? And the guy on Outer Banks seemed to adore his daughter, and he had a son. And the son on there is always trying to go for his dad's love, but he seems to love his daughter the most. Now, I'm going to I'm going to share some of the cast members on Outer Banks. How many in the chat so far have ever seen Outer Banks? Let me know in the chat. How many in the chat have ever seen Outer Banks on Netflix? If you have not, you're missing it. Now, I know a lot of the cast is probably in their 20s, but the cast varies from 20s to probably on up in their 60s or later. It's variant. It's variant. I ignored that show for a long time, thinking it's not in my wheelhouse, until I got bored one night and thought, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a go. And then I did. And I was like, wait a minute. This is kind of good. And then the more I watched, the more I kind of got hooked. Because the show isn't just a young cast thing, it turns into a treasure hunt thing. Think, what are some treasure hunt movies where you really have to go on a treasure hunt? Like more and more into, I don't know, it goes under the ocean, into caves, it just goes further and further and further. Men particularly would like the treasure hunt aspect. So it attracts teenagers, men, women. It's drama, it's mystery, it's national treasure, it's all of it. Okay? So I got hooked to where I started looking forward to the next season and the next season until I started just watching the show, binging on it. Okay, I had started binging on it. which I typically don't do. But then as a psychotherapist, I could see parallels. I could see parallels with Murdaugh and not just one father from the Kooks, but a father from the Pogues, at how desperate they get. Okay? And then I could see parallels in my past life growing up about how making money, being in a position of power, being in the South, that a family who's been around for a long time, who may or may not be respected, how he could get in a whirlwind of trouble, who seems to love his kids, right? And it's not an excuse, because I could see Murdaugh, he could be respectful and do all this stuff for a long time and then be in hot crap. Here he's raised his kid for 21 years, right? You hear of men doing it, women too, but men doing it to their wives for one reason or another, but your child? Whole different ball game. Whole different ball game. And you're thinking, you've been hunting with this child, you've done all kinds of things with your child. Even if your child's a whole handful of hot mess, how could you do it to your kid? Now, I know his kid was in trouble for the boat accident and still hadn't gone to trial. Maybe he thought, well, I'm saving him going to jail. Who knows? Maybe he thought he was going to cost him a whole heck of a lot of money. But I know he was going to be caught up with because of all the money he had taken from people. I know his wife was living at the beach house. She wasn't even living at home. We're talking about Murdaugh. He had to call her back to that home that day. Let me show you some of the cast of. I'm jumping back and forth, I know, sorry. Let's show you some of the cast of Outer Banks real quick. Images from Outer Banks. No, wrong ones. These are some of the characters of Outer Banks. See if you can see them. Let me blow them up. It's not blowing up. I'm not doing well at blowing it up. This is John B. He plays John B. Can you see it, or is it still small? Nope, still small, huh? I don't know which one I've got it on. See if I can share it again. Settings. Share screen. I might be better sharing this. Okay. See if that shares better. That is the father on Outer Banks. He's the one that gets in a lot of trouble. I don't know if you can see it or not. He gets in a lot of trouble because he is always trying to get money fast and be in power. That's the dad. That's the daughter, Sarah, and that is his son, Rafe. Rafe's always trying to make dad proud and make a fast buck. Make dad proud and make a fast buck. Sarah dates John B., who is with the Pogues, and dad does not like that. But the Pogues ultimately have a good heart, and they go after the treasure that dad wants. But he never plans to take the lives of others, but he will do it if they get in the way. And he makes deals with cops in all kinds of ways. He pays off the system. And you can tell by the look on his son's face, he's not necessarily a good guy. But there's a lot of ships and boats and caves and the whole 9 yards in this show. See, for a bad guy, he's not a bad looking guy. Until he looks like this. But he can be very charming and convincing when he wants. That is John B. to the left. He is a Pogue. But there is a hierarchy in the South, and to some degree it still exists today. Now, as you can see, this is, I don't know if you can see that now because I haven't pulled it up. Hey, Care Bear. I'm going to drop the link in case anybody wants to come up with me. It's sad that hierarchy still exists today, but unfortunately, it does. And that is what the Murdaugh family, has been getting away with allegedly. They're opening up the Stephen Smith case. They're opening up his nanny/housekeeper's case back up. And they sort of got away with those things because of the hierarchy and power that he held in the community. It's like the good old boys club. If he did a law case in the area, whether for a cop or somebody else, then you got brownie points as far as other people were concerned. I had an attorney that was working a custody case with Noah and my ex because they thought they could just take him anytime they wanted to. They'd never learn how to take care of him. I wasn't going to let him do that because he didn't learn how to take care of him. He was going to have supervised visitation. And I won back child support. I wasn't going to, look, it was a trickle down thing. He owed me so much back child support I was never going to get. And I got part of it. And he had to give part of it to the attorney. I got a phone call from my southern attorney and said, let me keep this money and I won't pay you for the, next 2 times we have to go to court. Let me keep this money. And Stephen and I looked at each other like, I don't know if that's a good deal or not. We probably won't see that money. Well, he kept the money. Anyway, long story short, we kind of got, over. And come to find out, this attorney was doing Coca-Cola. Taking money not just from me, but from other clients to get away from our little boy. Good old South. Good old South. So when you watch the background, going back to that show we're talking about, Outer Banks. When you watch Outer Banks, I know it's a Netflix show, and I know they're going after treasure, and that's probably the unrealistic part. Maybe. But I have to say, if you can imagine it and create a movie or show about it, odds are 9 out of 10 times it probably can become reality. Because a lot of what you see on that show, short of the treasure, is real. Meaning, the pogues and the kooks and the rich people being uppity about who their kids date, and then not all of them, let me preface, not all rich people are like that, but a lot like that about who their kids date and how they, make differences about who's got money and who they hang around and who they invite to things and how they see their ways about being with people. And I've worked at companies like before I became a therapist and stuff, worked at people that owned big furniture companies that they charged a lot of money for their furniture in Buckhead. And they owned these companies and they had designers in house, right? And they dealt with a lot of wealthy people. And they were real uppity about who they dealt with, who they spoke to, the kind of parties they had, etc. And how they spoke about people behind the scenes in the South. And who they hired and how they preferred for you to look. No joke. Not a joke. At all. And kind of how they treated their workers. And they would treat them nice with a little bit of snobbery underlying it. Definitely like their workers, if you get what I'm saying. Some stuff doesn't die easily. So, if you've watched any of the trial and seen some of the people that came up and heard about Murdaugh's nanny housekeeper that had that questionable passing that fell down the stairs, and they talked about how hard she worked for her money, and she didn't make a lot of money. Here she worked for these real rich folks, right? And basically raised their kids. And apparently she didn't make a hell of a lot of money. What a shame. You would have thought she would have made a lot more than she did. Then there's the woman that took care of Murdaugh's mom. And she told the truth on stand. And she put in all these extra hours after the passing of his wife and son. And here he is saying, now, I hear you have an upcoming wedding, second day. If you need help with that wedding, I'm here. And if you need a position at the elementary school, I know so and so. This is the day after. You see, he's pushing his ability to do things for her. As long as she says he was there for so long at the house, he's doing it the next day, the very next day, right after the passing of Paul and Maggie. Very next day, he's trying to use his power in an underlying way to try to make sure she says what he wants. It's in a very southern way, in a very passive aggressive way. You'll see a lot of these behaviors on that show too. Until it's not so passive aggressive and it's more forward. And I guarantee you Murdaugh worked that way too, and definitely Paul, from what, and I hate to talk about the people who aren't here anymore, but from what I understand and I have heard from lots of testimony, people talking about him in these videos that you watch on Netflix about the family, Paul was very vocal and out there and matter of fact and said it the way he wanted to. Hey there, Indub. When you watch these things on Netflix about the family, he didn't care. He just said whatever because he was a Murdaugh. That was his favorite thing. I'm a Murdaugh. And friends and people that were interviewed said one of Maggie's favorite things to say to the boys were, "You're Murdaugh. You need to remember you're Murdaugh." Because that carries a lot of weight. You're a Murdaugh. When a name carries a lot of weight. What's that simple? You are a Murdaugh. Sometimes names carry weight and power. And one of the boys interviewed after the boat incident says, "You know who he is? He's Alex Murdaugh's son. Good luck with that." Meaning they couldn't touch Paul. So you hear and see what I'm talking about. So you hear that kind of thing on the show Outer Banks, and you heard that kind of thing on different interviews and on stories on Netflix about the Murdaugh family. But guess what? That happens in real life, especially in the South. North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. I don't know about Florida. But the Good Old Boys Club is alive and well. And it has nothing to do with color. Good Old Boys Club is alive and well in the South. If you make the money and you have the prestige and you know enough people in the South, it carries weight. And you can sweep some stuff under the rug. Yes, you can. So it doesn't matter if you are a lawyer, a doctor, in government, politics, independently wealthy, come from a long line of rich people, you can do the thing in the South. I'm sure other places too, but it especially holds true in the South. Somebody might come over after my butt, and I'm sure I might hear some comments after the fact, but it's true. It's true, it's true, it's true. And it's not all rich people. Let me say that. It's not all rich people. It's not all well-to-do people. I've met many that still have integrity. Is it up there in the north too, Marie? People that lack integrity, that are well to do, will take advantage of that. The ones that have integrity work real hard to fight against that because they get a bad rap because of those that have taken advantage of it. They get a really bad rap because of it. But, honey, please. I can remember being a teenager and my best friend, her family was, her mom had been married. I don't know how many times she'd been married. She was always very lovely to me. Her mother was always very lovely to me. And we were besties. And I would go to her house some. We never hung out there long. Um, she had a bunch of siblings. Her mom, like I said, don't know how many times her mom had been remarried. Her stepdad was always nice to me. Um, but she was going to a debutante ball. And I couldn't quite wrap my brain around the debutante ball. And I was like so excited for her because she got to dress up so beautifully and get these flowers. And she wanted my mom to do her makeup. And I was, oh, Christy, you're going to this debutante ball. And she was going to be presented as a young woman and a debutante and all this stuff. And I was like, oh man, I wish I could go. I wish I could go to something like that. Wow, how does somebody get in that, right? And I didn't realize you had to be rich. I didn't realize her family was rich because of her stepdad. Boing. She lived on the way other side of my neighborhood where all the great big houses were. Not that I thought hers was that much, you know, hers didn't look like a mansion to me. It didn't look like a mansion to me. Of course, I lived on the poor man's side. I mean, we were just regular middle class. But she lived on the way other side where the people that had lots more money lived. But I didn't realize you had to be. I didn't know exactly what her stepdad did, for one thing. But I didn't realize it was this thing to be a debutante. I couldn't wrap my brain around, you know, she was a debutante. So I guess she was trying not to hurt my feelings. Hey, Shelly Marie. Because I couldn't be a debutante. So I guess I was lucky she was my friend, that they would let her be my bestie. To this day, I can't find her because I don't know what her last name probably is now. And her other name was Christy White, and you know, there's probably a million Christy Whites in the world now. So Christy White, if you're ever seeing this, or Donna, please reach out to me because I've been looking for you for years, and I love you. But anyway, they always look beautiful, and I didn't understand the whole debutante thing. But yeah, it was a real thing back then, and I loved everybody. I didn't care if you had money, didn't have money, purple, yellow, black, white, green. So it was hard for me to wrap my brain around the whole haves and have nots. But, I really got to thinking about the character crossovers. People that would, if you get in my way, I don't care how much I love you, it's you or me. It's you or me. And I might have to delete you. I might have to delete you. And I'm thinking he thought, Paul, I love you, but you are already in trouble, and it's you or me. And I think that his wife was already living at the beach. No, I know she was already living at the beach house. And she went through the monetary stuff. She owned all the property. Her name was on all the properties. But what I cannot figure out is how this was going to save his butt. How he thought, after what he'd done to the clients and the firm, how he thought this would save his butt. Unless he thought he would get money from it and he could pay back what he did. I don't know how he thought it would save his butt. What say you in the chat? What say you? How can this save anybody's soul? How can this fix anything? The only thing that bothered me about the whole trial is, even though I thought he was guilty, I did not feel ultimately that there was enough evidence to say guilty without a shadow of a doubt. And I want to know what you think, if you watched any of it. I felt like, to be honest, there would at least be a hung jury. Because I think the only saving grace there, it was in his county, his judge that he stood before and done cases with, and the people in the jury had already heard stuff because they had no choice but to hear stuff. But life imitating art, even though it's more fun to watch Outer Banks, a lot of the energy and stuff going on in Outer Banks, to me, explains to some degree how things like this can happen. It does. And how people eager with money and greedy and power can sacrifice love and blood over family, unfortunately. I'm glad that most of us have some loved ones in our family that we feel would never do this. But it is concerning that I see more and more on television and movies that I'm realizing after the fact this coming to pass. We see things in the past that we think, oh, that's cool. Wow, wonder if that'll ever happen. Oh, can you imagine? And then years later, guess what? It's come true. It's come to pass. It's come to reality. Art has imitated life. Life has imitated art. And now IA is heavy on our butts. Can you feel it? IA is heavy on our butts. And it was years ago, we were seeing it, and we were like, oh, Schwarzenegger, a robot on Earth. Right? What was that movie? An artificial intelligent robot on Earth fighting with a little kid. Guess what? Artificial intelligence is right here in our laps. Right here in our laps. Right here. And what are we going to do about it? Seriously. Now there's all this pressure. You better get on the bus. You better figure out how to handle and use it to your advantage, because guess what? If you don't use it, you're going to lose it. Everybody's going to be ahead of the game. Everybody's going to be ahead of the game but you. Terminator. Thank you, Shelley. When Terminator was on, we were like, oh, that's scary. Would that ever happen? No, that would never happen. We'd never have artificial intelligence on this. That's just a movie. That's just a movie. We'll never have artificial intelligence able to talk to us and carry on. And guess what? It's here. It's right here, right now. And it's crept in. It's in our commercials. It's in our living rooms. It's happening now. They've just Jimmy slid it in on us. We're listening to it on videos thinking it's people talking to us. And it's not. What if I told you right now I'm artificial intelligence? What would you say? What would you say? Would it freak you out if I told you all this time I'm artificial intelligence? Just joking. No way, I'm not artificial intelligence. I'm not perfect. Artificial intelligence acts perfect, but it's not. Good. Don't believe it. That would be freaky. But it's true. They're throwing it in our laps hard now. Hard. And we need to decide how we feel about it, what we're going to do about it. Are we going to embrace it? How we're going to learn to navigate it? But anyway, back to the Murdaugh case and Outer Banks. First of all, I want to ask all of you in chat, how do you feel about what happened with the Murdaugh case? How the end product came out? Alexa. Good one, Shelley. Started with Alexa. Hi, I'm Alexa. How can I help you? Hello. This is Alexa. How do you feel about the how they voted for the Murdaugh case? Do you feel it was fair? Do you feel that they had enough evidence? Just curious. See, the thing is, I feel he was guilty, but reasonable doubt, right? If you were in the jury, do you feel there was reasonable doubt? That is the question. 2 weapons. Could he have hired a shooter? That's the question. Could he have hired a shooter? Absolutely, Shelley. So much circumstantial evidence. I've always heard it's too hard to convict somebody on a lot of circumstantial evidence. There were no fingerprints. When they said there was blood on a shirt, the paper came back and said that it wasn't blood, which was worrisome. He lied a lot. The times were off. Paul's video is the only thing that was very convincing to me. His video on Snapchat. If he had been given a trial somewhere else, different judge, that he had not appeared before arguing cases with a group of people in another city that had not heard of him, I wonder what would have happened. That's my question. Because the only thing I think of, if I had been in a place, wrong time, wrong place, and there was no evidence whatsoever, right? And I know that I did not do it, and they put me in jail with circumstantial evidence, ooh, buddy, I would hate that. Yeah, I see what you're saying, Shelley. But do I feel he's guilty? Yes. Do I also feel he could have paid off some convicts that he could have helped go to jail that wouldn't have told on him? That too. And the only thing that makes me say that is when they had to put a dog down before he couldn't do it. Either way, his hands are dirty. Either way, his hands are dirty. And then there's Buster. Then there's Buster in the Stephen Smith case. You know what I mean? Buster in the Stephen Smith case. He may end up in jail too, for all we know. He may end up in jail. We don't know. That's squirrely. But I'm telling you, if you want to get a good feel, and I mean a good feel, for the psychology of how that mentality goes, watch that Outer Banks. I'm telling you. Because they get that untouchable, that mentality of being untouchable, and just sweeping it under the rug and having some degree of lack of conscience for things. A lack of conscience for things, for certain things. It's kind of bizarre. Not all rich people, not all rich people with power, but especially if they think they can pass it off. Because here's when he kept saying, I would never do anything to hurt Maggie or my pawpaw. He might can say that truthfully from his mouth if he passed the buck to someone else. Do you see what I'm saying? That's how clever attorneys would do that. You too, Shelley Marie, thank you for coming. Because they reason it out. If they have someone else doing it, they can rationally say that they would never do it. I would never do that. Because they could honestly say they would never do that. They can take it off their conscience as saying they would never do that. It is a mentality of passing the buck to someone else. It's a rationalization. Just like JB's daddy in here ends up taking the lives of two guys and said, I had to do it to protect you. It was either them or you. I had to do it to protect you, son. It was either them or you. Do you understand? So there's always a rationalization of something. There's always a way around it. And that's what helps them sleep at night. Because there's this odd reasoning around it. So they're able to make themselves more of the martyr or the hero. And it is a them or you kind of thing. It starts off with their family or you, and then it's a them or you. And it starts off just like the Pogues or the Kooks are my family or your family, or them or you, or me or you. It's a psychological game of cat and mouse or survival of the fittest. And it's a power play. But I highly recommend watching Outer Banks. But it does take you into a psychological game of warfare in many ways. But look, Outer Banks is love, romance, drama. It's finding treasure. It's getting away from the bad guys. It's all of it. But it also is life imitating art, art imitating life. And it takes you into the psyche of powerful and rich too, in a way that is truthful. I hate to say. They think they're writing something false, but it is truthful. I have seen it over and over and over again. And it's kind of a sad state of affair when being a name, being a status symbol, having money and power means more than anything else. And ego and greed, well, he had a drug addiction, Murdaugh did, but takes you too far into the dark side. But I don't know what's going to end up of Buster. And I do have to say, there are some, if you go down the rabbit hole on YouTube, or you watch some documentaries on Netflix as well, some of the phone calls between Buster and Alex Murdaugh, and how does he get Alec when it's Alex? Anyway, some of the jailhouse phone calls make me see Buster in a little bit different light as well, because I know he's on his dad's side, but Buster sounds a little bit arrogant, and I cannot say that I think that Buster truly believes his dad is innocent. I feel like deep in his gut, somewhere, that Buster knows that his dad had to have done this. Because there's this streak in the family, in all honesty, in everything I've watched, and even in the phone call where the nanny housekeeper died, you can hear Maggie on the phone with 911. There's a streak in all of them that's just like It's another one under the rug. It's almost like disposable people. That some are just disposable people that have outlived their purpose and they got in the way when you listen to some of the phone calls. And I really wonder what's going to become of Buster. And I feel like there is more news that's going to come out and evidence with the Stephen Smith case. Because his body was placed in the road. It was not a hit and run. Mm-mm. And I feel like there was more to the relationship with Stephen Smith and Buster, and his dad was like, there is no way in hell that any relationship you could have had with Stephen Smith is going to be out and tarnish the Murdaugh name. And this needs to end now. Needs to end now. That boy's going to run his mouth. Because he doesn't care. Speaking of Stephen Smith, and this needs to end now. That sweet boy, unfortunately, something's going to come up or out, and people were afraid to speak. That's my feeling. But anyway, please check out Outer Banks on Netflix. Tell me what you think. And if you see any correlation whatsoever. Now, Outer Banks is bigger than life, but you may see some correlation between Sarah Cameron's dad, not the good looks and everything, and her brother, their behaviors, and Alex Murdaugh's behavior, and Paul's behavior. Now, Sarah Cameron's brother's behavior got way out there. But you'll see. Is it insanity or evil? Unfortunately, it's not insanity, Rita. It's not insanity. It is selfishness. It is ego with a touch of evil. And it went from looking at his family and his power and money and addiction to us or them to it's me or you. So it was him or them. So he was in it's about me mode. He was in it's about me. So he was in I'm going to do me mode. Because Paul was in trouble. Paul would potentially go to court. Paul found his stash. His wife owned all the property. She was living at the beach house. She was seeing what was going on with the financials. See what I'm saying? Yeah, it was easy for him to blame the pills. Some of the money went to the pills. I still believe he has a stash of money hidden. Stash of money hidden. You know, why didn't. Oh, that's the other thing. On Outer Banks, the bad dad has a plane. Alex Murdaugh has a plane. Why didn't he just take his money, get on a plane, and go? But no. You know, ultimately, what if he has insurance policies on Paul and Maggie? Did he think he could blame it on somebody else, get away with it, get the insurance money, and pay off some of the money he was about to get in trouble with? Don't know. Don't know. But it blew up in his face. He got busted for all that happened at the attorney's firm and all that stuff. Because it was, what, a good year and stuff before they started going after him for Paul and Maggie. But still, you know, it's a mess. But again, good old boy club. He rectified there was no insurance on Maggie and Paul. You know, just because he testified there was none, he lies a whole lot. Does not mean there was not any. Just because he testified there was none does not mean there was not any. And they want to know where all that money that he took from the company, all that money was not spent on pills. There's got to be money somewhere else too. This story is not over. But, you know, the show Outer Banks, I was telling them, you know, I'm from the South. I've seen a lot of the good old boy thing going on. And how people with power and money do get a lot of slide bys and treat it differently. And with the law and power and people in the whole 9 yards, it does happen. In Outer Banks, there's a lot of similarities, not in total because it's a show, but there's a dad on there that does a lot of bad things. And with his family, I mean, there's art imitates life in a lot of ways. And in the South, in particularly, you have all those power struggles with people with money, people with no money, how they're treated, how things get slid under the rug, etc. How families get treated, how people are disposable when they get in the way. And a lot of times it's not even planned. But like I said, he called Maggie home. She had not been living in the house. It was almost like, okay, I'm in trouble. I got to do this thing. Here we go. I'm not going to get past it with them. This is a plan. Can't do this anymore. I have no choice. This is it. and he's an attorney, so it was like he was trying to plan in his head which way can I go with this to make it the best way to um, be able to litigate it if it goes there. But dude got a plane. I mean, I think that he thought if they passed away, he got insurance, he got sympathy. You see what I'm saying? He got money, he got sympathy of the people. It would have smoke screened a lot of stuff. I mean, that's the only reason I can think of. But those in the replay gang and afterwatch, whatever, please put your thoughts and comments below. And if you do watch Outer Banks, or you go back and watch Outer Banks, and you watch Ward Cameron in the show, because he shows up pretty quick. And if you binge it, yeah, especially, and you start to see how bad things get with Ward Cameron, Sarah Cameron's dad, he's the rich guy. Let me know what you think about similarities and how, the rich people with power start sort of pushing stuff under the rug, going for the money, not having a conscience when they think they can just make their own rules. Yeah, I know, 99 cases coming up for theft and fraud. That's enough to put him in jail for a lifetime. Unless he thought he would be able to cut that short if he paid a lot of it off, which I think that's what he was thinking. If he paid a lot of it off, I think he thought, well, maybe I can cut a deal, get out sooner, etc., because they were selling off a lot of property and stuff to try to make amends with that. What a hot mess. There's more story to come. Trust and believe. This story is not over, for sure. And they're going to appeal. If he thinks he is never going to be able to come out of this, I think that he will not stay in there for a lifetime and hang out in jail. But anyway, I better get off of here too. More positive things for future shows, but I just wanted to be able to put a slant on this. Hopefully you guys and girls will watch the Outer Banks and put the two together and tell me what you think. And you'll get more of a mindset for how the people in the South that have money, not everybody that has money abuses power and things like that. There are a lot of wonderful, lovely people with integrity that do the right thing. But there are some baddies. Thank you, Care Bear. Yes, please like and smash the like button. Like and smash the like button. Subscribe. I appreciate and love you all so much. And check out Outer Banks. It's got something for everybody. And like I said, I dismissed that show until I didn't. And then I started watching it like a baddie. Like a bad biatch. But anyway, love you all so much. Put your comments underneath the video. Let me know what you think of the Murdaugh case, what you think of the decision that they made, what your thoughts are about the outstanding Stephen Smith case that they're opening, and about his nanny, housekeeper, etc. Let me know what you think about Alex Murdaugh family and the Outer Banks comparison, etc. Hey, April Showers, so happy to see you. But anyway, I'm gonna go grab some food. I love you all so much. Remember, your vibe attracts your tribe, and you teach people how to treat you. Until next time, mwah, everybody take care, and I will see you on the flip side. Here we go. Dun 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 dun.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, 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 go. Hustle hard, hustle every single day. I'll be making moves till I'm buried in my grave.
Bye, everybody. Love you.
I don't wanna be a slave. I've been doing shit my way, or the highway, and in the driveway.